Welcome to Machines More. We saw Asus's 5000 series ProArt GPUs shown at Computex in Taipei a few months ago. This is a card series that I've been waiting to check out, and one that many of you have been waiting for. So the form factor from the 4000 series ProArts meshed well with popular SFF cases like the Fractal Terra and the T1. The 5000 series ProArts will continue to have similar dimensions, and I believe these will be of interest to many users, including SFF builders. Graphics cards featuring NVIDIA's 5080 GPUs were initially launched towards the beginning of this year, and at this point, it's been more than a few months into the cycle, and at this point, Asus is finally adding in their ProArt models for 5000 series. So far, 5080 and 5070 Ti have been announced. I have the 5080 ProArt OC here. Big thanks to Asus for sending the review unit by. And as a reminder, the feedback that you will hear, these are my opinions, and you can expect objective and fair information for all the products that I cover on this channel. So do make sure you hit that like button, and also make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Big thanks. ProArt is Asus's creator-targeted brand. You'll typically see cleaner aesthetics, simple or more subtle lighting, and even if you're not a creator, there's nothing that precludes this from being used in a more gaming or general purpose system. And as you'll see, this is just a great looking GPU all around, and great especially for dimension sensitive builds. Dimensions for the ProArt 5080 fall within the specifications for NVIDIA's SFF-ready designation, and that is just a quick reference spec such that users that are case and GPU shopping can just quickly pick one of each from the list and know that they will be compatible. This one is 304mm long by 126mm wide by 50mm thick, so it comes in 4mm longer and 6mm wider than the previous 4080 ProArt. So there's not too big of a difference there, although there is. I built it into the T1 V2 here just to give you an idea, and it will also slot in nicely to the Terra. The 50 series ProArts will fit quite nicely in those cases, so long as you have the necessary 50mm of thickness spacing dialed in. Now do take note of the space required for a 12-volt power cable. The port area is inset below the edge of the cooler shroud, and that's a helpful design, but you still need to allow some extra space for those depending on the type of power connector cable you have. Now, quick note related to the power connector: if your cable isn't fully seated, a red light will indicate the fault, and that actually helped me once or twice when I was setting this thing up. It's actually kind of tricky to make sure the cable is fully engaged, so this does help prevent something bad from potentially happening. If you've been looking at GPUs in the last year, you might notice that these bear a striking resemblance to Asus's Prime series. Now, in fact, both cards here, form and form factor wise, they are exactly the same. The fans look identical with the same setup, same rounded over shroud. The shape is a bit different, but there's still a cutout in the back plate for a flow-through section. You got the inset 12-volt power connection, P versus Q toggle switch. Now, save for a few details. In fact, they are very, very similar. And I made reference to this earlier in the year. I was calling the ProArt GPUs because they seemed like they really morphed towards the cleaner ProArt aesthetic, but not all the way, right? Because the ProArt series takes that aesthetic the full step further. And the most notable part of the appearance enhancement package this time around is the darker wood trim on the leading edge of the shroud. Now that's flanked by a gold stripe. You got gold accents on the fans and the ProArt logo. While it's hard to pick out when the system isn't on, the card does have a ProArt badge that lights up when powered. You may want to consider turning the light off for blacked out builds. It's also got a wood grain-like pattern on the metal back plate and the consistent black and gold aesthetic throughout. So they did a nice job on the appearance package here. Now, since you can see a lot of it through the cutout, I like that the ProArt heatsinks are black instead of the silver that is typical with many cards. So it is very clean, very elegant. The heatsink still features the same vapor chamber design plus 6 heat pipes as the Prime Series 5080, so the cooling performance for Asus's add-in cooler here between those two should be very similar. Now there is one bigger difference, and that is the USB-C port on the ProArt, which as I understand is the only current 5080 to have that. In my testing, it worked as a display out to a monitor which can be nice if you have a more creator-driven monitor that only takes USB-C. That port can also charge devices, so it can work for VR headsets. Now, I was actually hoping this would work with drives or downstream devices, but connected to your USB-C monitor, but those didn't work for me. And like I said, you can charge something, but I don't know why you do that over using another port on your motherboard. So if you're not going to be connecting to a USB-C monitor, you're actually going to be losing a display port here. Most users won't need all those, but it is just something to be aware of. At Computex, Asus showed a model with an SSD. Now that is not currently listed yet, so I don't think that will be an available option for ProArt when it launches, but hopefully soon they'll bring that up, because I really like that option on the 4060 Ti when I tested it. Now, 5080 sits towards the top of the stack currently, just below the 5090, and just to give you an idea of where things stack up below the 5080, I generally got about 15% better 1440p averages versus a more premium 5070 Ti solution. Now, the good thing about this being launched right now is that GPU prices have stabilized a little bit more, and you can find pricing close or closer to MSRP at major retailers for many card SKUs. And as an example, you can get a 5080 Prime for about $1,000 US. This is much better versus the beginning part of the year. So I would expect have a reasonable expectation that you can get this card through retailers at a pricing close to the MSRP. So versus earlier in the year when it was really hard to give you an informed opinion since I didn't know what the eventual retail price would be. On spec, ProArt is actually a little bit higher clocked out of the box at 2730 megahertz versus 2685 megahertz on the Prime. These are both OC models. In practice, though, the 5080 Prime I tested actually clocked in slightly better than the ProArt, but it also drew down about 5% or so more power in gaming, more or less depending on what title you are running. And that translated to a marginal difference both in synthetics and also gaming performance. The 5080 Prime is just very, very slightly ahead. So here are just some comparison points for your reference to show that. But the Prime here that I tested, it's doing that at the expense of more power. And if anything, it's the ProArt that seems a little bit more reasonable in terms of the power draw. You can always dial in a little bit more power as needed on the ProArt. Plus, there's naturally going to be some variation between chip to chip, so I wouldn't take too much stock into just a comparison of these n equals 1. But if you dropped to normalize power between the two cards, I think the ProArt would actually come out slightly ahead. Either way, I think these two are going to be very, very close. I saw similar fan speeds across the board in the P mode, which is really just governing the fan behavior. The Q mode will result in slightly higher temps at the benefit of lower noise. At the P mode, which I think most users should be fine keeping at, the fans did sound very similar between the two models. So I'm going to give you a quick sound sample here from the ProArt card at what may be the typical fan speed you see at a 25 degrees C room temp. So there aren't exactly very many slimmer 5080s other than the 2-slot Founders Edition card and some 2.5 slot ones for MSI and Gigabyte, but you may be actually cross-shopping Asus Prime and new ProArt because you want the cleaner appearances, right? So just know that performance is not going to be hugely different between the two models here. The pricing may be, though. I only have MSRP for 2 ProArt SKUs so far. The 5070 Ti OC will be $910. So assuming retailers will have it at that price, that's comparable to the 5070 Ti Prime OC, which is $940 at most retailers that I checked. So if you were interested in the 70 Ti OC at that price to begin with, then yeah, I think I would definitely go for the ProArt over that one. The 5080 OC, the ProArt will be $1,600 though. So I was a little surprised since that sounds steep versus the Prime OC that can be found for $1,400 now. And as nice as the ProArt treatment is, I just don't see $200 of premium over the Prime. Now, realistically, if you can find them, I would still be targeting the non-OC models that I am told will launch at the same time, since you can reasonably tune the performance yourself if you just want to get the performance of the OC models. And as a reference point, the 70 Ti Prime can be found at NVIDIA's MSRP of $750 right now, if you have access to the right retailer. And I can even find the 5080 Prime at the $1,000 NVIDIA MSRP. And I wish I had concrete numbers for the non-OC ProArts, but hopefully the ProArts, the non-OCs come in similarly to those non-OC price points with the Prime, since it's mainly the appearance package that's different here. But definitely, if you can get it at a reasonable price, I think the ProArt is more refined versus the Prime. And I know this isn't going to be how you use your card, but when you pick the ProArt, it just feels so smooth and clean. This one will integrate really well with a variety of builds, and whether you are a cultured individual or professional, your PC build can reflect that with these, and I'm glad that Asus has continued this card lineup with this aesthetic. So definitely go and check this one out. Hope to see these in Terras and T1s and all of your builds soon. So also please consider using the links down below that I'll leave when this card launches to go ahead and support the channel. Big thanks for watching.